Like and subscribe right now, or else this is going to be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit. Serious. Nurses and doctors of Reddit, what's your weirdest/scariest paranormal stories that took place during work? There is probably some medical explanation for this, but still the weirdest thing I've seen as a nurse so far. We had a very robust, confused old lady on our floor. Her room was in front of the nurses' station, so we could keep an eye on her, and had one of our nurses' aides as a sitter too. She was always fighting, kicking, trying to get out of bed. Very restless and agitated, as some patients I've had before can get before death. One day we were called into the room as her heart rate was going down, and she lay still with her eyes open. It was 30, 20, then flatlined. We checked for a pulse, and did not find any. She was at ENR, so we did not attempt resuscitation. We close her eyes, prepare to get the body bag, and call the family. The sitter remains in there, to start getting the body ready. Less than 10 minutes later she calls us back in. The old lady is at it again, hitting, kicking, trying to get out of the bed. She came back to life. Honestly, we found the situation hilarious, and I still have never seen any patient come back like that on their own. I think she made it out of the hospital too. It's like the body pushed the soul out, and the soul was like, nope, I'm not done yet. She clearly had some unfinished business before she could move on. Devil, oh duck, it's her. We ain't ready for that crap yet, send her back. I worked in a pediatric hospital, and had always heard that the 4th floor right outside our oncology unit was haunted. I worked 312s normally, but would pick up overtime, and picked up a night shift. I was working in the NICU, which happened to also be on the 4th floor, but on the opposite side. The oncology unit had a staircase that was a shortcut down to the cafeteria, which was on the 2nd floor. At about 3 AM I was ready to take a short break, and wanted a cup of coffee from the cafeteria, so I decided to take that staircase. I walked through the automatic double doors, and saw a kid skipping down the hall. I called out to him as I was afraid a little kid had snuck out of a patient room. As soon as I called out to him he turned, and in the blink of an eye totally vanished. A lot of other nurses and docs had seen the same little kid skipping in that same hallway. Of course I chalked it up to just exhaustion, and didn't really think about it much after that. But you are damn sure I didn't use that hallway at night ever again. What was he wearing? To be honest, he was gone so quickly I didn't even really notice. I do kind of remember him wearing shorts without shoes. Shorts, that's good. That narrows the time period down to sometime between now and, let's see, the 1930s. I don't know why, but that just broke my heart. Imagining this little ghost boy running around with shorts and no shoes on. I was working at night, and one of the patients died while I was in the room. We tried everything to revive this person, but it didn't work, so after doing the papers and everything, I went to another place in the hospital, and I swear to God that this patient who I saw dead touched my right arm. I think that I have never cried that much in my life. Maybe it was their way of saying thanks for trying. That's a very sweet thought. My brother-in-law's son, sister's stepson, was in a bad accident. We had gathered at the ICU before he passed, and I went in with my sister and her 2 kids. They fell apart seeing their brother in such a bad state. They had already made the decision to take him off life support. Now they were letting family in before he died. My niece and nephew didn't want to go to his side. I brought them forward and told them this was the last time they would see him, and the only chance to say goodbye. I was crying a little bit myself. I had to bring them up this bedside. Later that night, after he passed, I was driving home, and as clear as if he were sitting right next to me, I heard him thank me. I told him he was welcome. Yeah, I've heard dead people saying thank you to me or some of my coworkers. Kinda creepy, but it's nice, because you feel like this person knows that you did everything in your power to help them. People see things during intense grief. My father saw it too. What did he see? As he was driving the car, he thought that he saw my grandfather who was dead. Did this happen right after your grandfather had passed away? Did he see your grandfather in the car? Yeah, it pretty much happened after the death rituals. He saw him on the road. Also, he saw him in his dreams and thought that he heard his footsteps in the house. He was pretty close to his father. A ward I worked on once had a patient who was a psychic slash medium as a patient. We had a bit of a laugh with her as she was on the ward for a while. She'd had a stroke which affected her mobility and she would do readings for the staff etc. from time to time. I took it all as just a bit of fun until one evening, when she pressed her nurse call buzzer and told us to go check on a patient in a side room as he was dead. We went to check and sure enough found that the gentleman had died. Later on we asked our psychic patient how she had known, and she told us she had seen him coming out of his room obviously distressed. She realized he had died and had to explain to him what had happened and help him to pass over / go to the light. Now I'm not a believer, but that gave me the creeps. She killed the patient. Okay, I'm a nurse but this did not happen to me, but several other nurses who worked at these units. There is a little girl who haunts the burn unit of a large military medical treatment facility in the US. She has been seen by both staff and patients. Haunts may not be the correct term, but she has been witnessed by several. Second, I used to work at the old Walter Reed Army Medical Center. In the old one, that moved back in 2011, there was a VIP ward. I believe it was Ward 72. Any retired general officers would stay there, along with any higher ups in the government, think Secretary of State, and other cabinet officials. There was also a room for the First Lady and President. This ward is private, locked at all entrances and very nice. It is furnished with very high-end furniture and a lot of it was donated by Mrs. Mamie Eisenhower, the wife of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Well, per my friend who worked there, the ghost of Mamie Eisenhower is very particular about anyone staying in her room, and if anyone did sleep in that room, she would yank off the bed sheets. My friends also said decorative pieces would randomly fall off tables or fly off the walls when they were the only ones up there. Mamie would also apparently page the supervisor, who would call the ward back to a very confused nurse as to who paged them. I used to work in a nursing home as both a CNA and an LPN. And while nothing too crazy happened, there were definitely things that happened out of the ordinary. I remember one time after someone had died I was cleaning up her body and the door to the room swung wide open. Even though it had been firmly latched nobody was there. It gave me the creeps. There were instances of furniture being moved, lights turning on and off by themselves, and toilets randomly flushing by themselves as well. I also remember I had one resident one night who asked me to make sure I closed the door to the closet that was at the end of her bed, and she told me that when it was open, that woman kept going in and out of it all night, and it kept her awake. When I worked at the funeral home I was told a story about an elderly lady that had died. The husband said he wanted her to be buried with her ring as she never took it off. My coworker was in the morgue and was washing the body. She removed the ring to mark it down on the paperwork. As soon as she did, a styrofoam head they used for wigs went flying across the room. She just said out loud, alright, I'll put your ring back on. No more disturbances. I have a story kinda like this. Not funeral related, but I was at my grandpa's house, I think 3 years after my grandma died. Whole family was there, like we do every night, talking, having a good time. My uncle said something about the decor, which my grandma picked out. I think he said something about it being ugly or something. All of a sudden a glass lamp falls and breaks. Lesson learned, don't piss off grandma. My grandma passed, and after the funeral my mom and I were sitting quietly on the couch. We started hearing a noise coming from the clock hanging on my mom's wall that my grandma gifted my mom. The noise was the pendulum in the clock. It was swinging in all different directions so quickly the clock nearly flung off the wall. My mom and I just looked at each other in disbelief. The only reason I actually believe it happened is because my mom saw it too. We were on a night shift, standing / sitting around the nurse's station and talking about weird things that had happened. One of the HCAs was in a side room once doing last offices, and the lights flicked on and off twice. Calls bells going off when there was no one about to press them. Hearing a cough when there was no one there, etc. etc. As we were talking, there was a pause in the conversation and very clearly we heard typing from the keyboard at the doctor's desk, which was just round the corner from us. I stepped round the corner to see who it was, as usually the doctors would check in with us before sitting down, just to say hello and to see if there were any jobs needing down. So I looked round the corner after hearing the keys being tapped, as if someone was typing, only to see no one there. was very freaky, and we had to change the convo as we all felt too uncomfortable after that. Remind me of the haunted hotel room I was staying in. Everyone I learned upon checkout knew something was up, but no one, me included, mentioned it to the others for fear something less than innocuous would occur. My mom worked at a hospital in our town that shut down around 15 years ago. They were having a sort of farewell party with all the staff. She, my sister and I took a walk around at the end to take a last look. We went to the 4th floor and were the only people up there. Small hospital, easy to tell. As we are walking down the hallway, we hear footsteps that sounded like men's dress shoes walking next to us, louder and different than all our sneakers. When we stopped, the footsteps kept going down the hall. Once they got down the hall, the emergency light and alarm over the room started sounding. My mom went over and couldn't turn it off because the system was disconnected/turned off. I think she tried really hard to keep it together for us because all she said was that's weird, this whole system is already off. But I do remember us noping to the elevator right after that. When we got in the elevator, the button for the ground floor was pushed already. Easy to explain away as some other kid pushing all the buttons, but still weird given the circumstances. Wow, your mom has nerves of steel. I work in nursing homes, and one very old facility I have been in was a maternity hospital 100 years ago. It is common in this building for residents with dementia to see and play with babies that are not there. Do the residents know it's a former maternity hospital and have it as some kind of subconscious memory? If they were never told yet still have these experiences, I would be massively creeped out. So, I'm a security officer at a hospital. We are responsible for any and all physical interventions with patients what require any amount of force, meaning they are confused and need to be brought back to bed, had fallen and require assistance being picked up safely, etc. Dementia patients do incredibly weird and random things, especially hospitalized dementia patients, and for severe cases, they are basically not even human anymore and revert to an almost primordial state where there just isn't a soul in there anymore at times. Their hallucinations are legit. They have legitimate sensory hallucinations. When they think they see someone in the room, their brain legitimately thinks they are seeing someone in the room. If they smell coffee, their brain legitimately thinks there is coffee close by. Dementia kind of short circuits the part of their brain responsible for sensory control, cerebrum. When they are in new settings, it often confuses them and exacerbates their symptoms. Like when I say they do random things, your imagination couldn't actually accurately portray how weird it is being around them at first. You get very used to it, especially when your job is to verbally and physically intervene with these patients to try to get them back into bed, stop hitting staff, stop leaving, trying to keep them safe, etc. They frequently tell you there's more people in the room than there are, literally pay you money that doesn't exist, like literally place air in your hand. They'll bring up very old memories thinking it was that time. They'll think someone in their life is 30 years younger. They'll play with imaginary animals and pet them, etc. All of usually revolving around long-term memories and a generally confused state that one only really understands once they're around mental health facilities/patients. It's very sad to see, honestly. I've been around it enough that if I ever was diagnosed with it, I don't think I could live anymore knowing what I would become and what a burden I would be to my family. I worked as a medtech at an assisted living facility. One day a resident, I'll call her Margaret, suddenly passed away and her family left all her belongings in the room that night, including her pendant, to call the staff for help. The next night Margaret's neighbor called the staff because someone was talking in the room next door and keeping them awake. We brushed the resident off knowing that Margaret's room was empty. About an hour later Margaret's pendant started going off from her empty apartment. I was the only one willing to go turn it off, so I walked into the room and it was freezing cold in the middle of summer. The air conditioning was off. Suddenly the bathroom door slammed as I was turning off the pendant light. I locked the door and ran back to the nurse's station. We forced one of the older male staff members to go check out the entire room, and he claims the door was still locked when he got down there and no one was in there. You're just like making me scared of the cold, don't ya? My mom used to work as a night nurse in the burn unit at a hospital in Dallas, Texas. She told me that people would always talk about how the burn unit was apparently haunted. She wasn't really sure whether or not to believe this until a little girl came into the unit with horrific burns. The little girl did not always have parents stay the night with her, so my mom would try to check up on her pretty often when she worked. One night, my mom asked the girl if she ever got scared at night. The little girl responded, "No, I don't get scared, because an old woman comes to read to me every single night and sits beside my bed while I fall asleep." This shocked my mom, because there were no older women working in the burn unit at night and she would usually be the only person on duty during those times. It isn't that scary, but she always recalls it being one of the craziest things that has ever happened as a healthcare worker. That's actually really nice. A nice old lady coming back to comfort hurt and scared kids.